would you do for a Klondike bar? Have you ever seen that commercial? What I kind of secretly love about that commercial is that so many people have seen it, but who's actually had a Klondike bar? Not me. But the commercial always made Klondike bar sound so incredibly fascinating. Like there wasn't anything that you wouldn't actually do for a Klondike bar. What's your Klondike bar? What's that thing you would do absolutely anything for? What's that thing you're obsessed with? Because people will do crazy things for the things that they're interested in. For example, let's look at people who camp outside of the Apple store on iPhone release days, or those people who wait outside for 12 hours just to get the best seat to see their favorite band in concert, or Black Friday. Should I say more? We know people will do bonkers things for the things that they are incredibly interested in. And we all know that there's probably something that we do something maybe a little crazy for. Have you ever climbed a tree for something you were interested in? Zacchaeus did. We are in week 2 of our series, It's Personal, where we're going to be talking about the story of Zacchaeus and how that can help us know how much God knows and loves about us so that we can get to know more and fall in love more with our God. Let's kick it off with the story of Zacchaeus to refresh our minds of what's going on. This story is in Luke 19 verses 1 through 10. It says, Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through the town. There was a man there named Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. He tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. When Jesus came by, he looked at Zacchaeus and called him by name. Zacchaeus, he said, quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today. Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. But the people were displeased. He has gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, they grumbled. Meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and said, I will give half my wealth to the poor, Lord. And if I have cheated people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much. Jesus responded, Salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost. Zacchaeus wanted to see Jesus so badly that he climbed up into a tree. I'm not entirely sure what Zacchaeus was hoping for when he climbed up into that tree, but we know that he just really wanted to see Jesus. That's it. Let's talk about who Zacchaeus was for a second. Zacchaeus was a tax collector, the chief tax collector. Of all of the tax collectors in the area, he was the head honcho, numero uno. And tax collectors were very hated people. Being a tax collector looked like this. You would be given a number from the powers that be to tax on people. That would be the people's taxes that they would have to pay. And men like Zacchaeus would go pick it up. However, they could add to the amount that people had to give in order for the tax collectors to get paid. So if the people are taxed, say, $100, tax collectors could tell them it's $150. Give $100 to the government and put $50 in their pocket. And it wasn't illegal. As you can imagine, no one wanted to pay more than was originally taxed to them, especially when they had to watch their local tax collectors become very rich. This is all from ripping people off of more money. This is what Zacchaeus did for a living. And apparently he was really good at it because he was the chief tax collector. And while it's a very wealthy job, it leaves a person feeling lonely, kind of isolated, because everyone else hates him. Which is why when Jesus tells Zacchaeus that he's going to his house, everybody else is incredibly upset. Zacchaeus was probably one of the most hated men in his community. So while that day, all Zacchaeus wanted was to just see Jesus, what Zacchaeus probably wanted most out of life was acceptance, belonging, maybe a friend. And what's cool about Jesus is he knows all of those interests that Zacchaeus has. He knew that Zacchaeus wanted to see him and for someone to care. So what does Jesus do? He invites himself over to dinner, which I know seems a little rude for us now, but back then, at that time, was a huge honor. You see, Jesus knows what we need, and he takes care of us. However, Jesus also knows what we want. He knows what we're fascinated by, what we're completely interested in. Even the little things that we might feel too silly to bring up to God when we pray, Jesus knows and cares about those things too. And we have tons of verses that tell us that Jesus cares so much about the things that we care about. Psalm 37:4 says, "Delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." Romans 8:28 says, "And we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose for them." And there are so many others. Jesus understood that Zacchaeus was just a person who wanted to belong. And Jesus went over to his place to show Zacchaeus that he did belong. If you've ever wondered what Jesus thinks about you, hopefully the story of Zacchaeus is really encouraging, because I feel like we sometimes forget how interested Jesus is in us. Like, we know that he's interested in us reading our Bibles, but he's also interested in your grades. He's definitely interested in us praying. He's also interested in your friends. We know he's interested in holy stuff, but he's incredibly interested in your real life stuff. Jesus is more than interested in our obedience. He's also interested in your hobbies, your family, the things that make you excited. I want you to know that the things that matter to you also matter to God. The things that interest you also interest him. And God doesn't just know that you love basketball or comics or theater or whatever it is that you're into, but he also knows why you love them so much. Jesus gets you. Jesus cares so much about you. You can tell him anything. You can ask him for anything. That doesn't mean that he's going to give you everything that you want, but he wants to hear about it from you. Now, let's flip the script a little bit. In this personal relationship with Jesus, we know that he knows our interests, but what is Jesus interested in? For that answer, we can also find that in the story of Zacchaeus. Verses 8-10 says this: "Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and said, 'I will give half my wealth to the poor, Lord, and if I have cheated people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much.' Jesus responded, 'Salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost.'" Jesus calls Zacchaeus a true son of Abraham. For the people back then, that was huge. Back in Genesis, Abraham was promised a multitude of descendants, of people that would come in his family for generations to come, as many as the stars. And so to be a part of that family was really special. And as Jesus is standing before a crowd of people who hate this man Zacchaeus, it was huge for Zacchaeus to be called a true son of Abraham. And it's all because he declares what he's going to do and how he's going to make his wrongs right. Jesus says that salvation has come to Zacchaeus' home that day. Jesus doesn't care about the money. He's never cared about the money. What he cares about is Zacchaeus' change of heart. Jesus cared so much about Zacchaeus that he came into his home and made him feel loved. And in return, and in response, Zacchaeus repented. He turned away from his old bad ways and vowed to make his wrongs right because it was the right thing to do. Zacchaeus had a high standing in the community, even though he was hated. But because of the love and grace that he received from Jesus, he humbled himself and gave back to all the people that he had taken from. When it comes to Jesus' interests, we know what interests him. Us, of course. I mean, we've already talked about that. That also means that Jesus is incredibly interested in the other 7 billion people on this planet. He made us carefully, and he loves us. So because he cares so much about our interests, he asks us to care for the interest of others. Paul talks about this in Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 through 4. Don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves. Don't look out for only your own interests, but take an interest in others too. James tells us in James 1:27, pure and genuine religion in the sight of God the Father means caring for orphans and widows in their distress and refusing to let the world corrupt you. And even Jesus says in John 13:34 through 35, so now I am giving you a new commandment. Love each other, just as I have loved you. You should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. Jesus has always cared about us caring for others. And as we continue discussing in this series how personal we could really be with Jesus, I want you to recognize that often being close to Jesus also means being close to others. So this week, I want you to try 2 things. Number 1, talk to Jesus about the things that matter to you. Tell him about your day, about your favorite parts, what you had for lunch, your least favorite part of the day, your favorite teacher, your best friend. Let him know the things you like. Tell him the things you're worried about. Jesus is never bored from hearing from you or about you because it's personal to him. And number 2, it might look a little different, but talk to others about what interests them. When it came to Zacchaeus, it wasn't personal for the crowd he was in. They'd made assumptions about Zacchaeus. They didn't really know him. Jesus was the only one who knew that what really mattered to Zacchaeus was that sense of belonging and acceptance. It's possible that you've made assumptions about people who you think are one way because that's what you've always believed about them, but you've never made it personal. Maybe this week you can find different ways to make it personal by discovering what interests others. Let go of the ideas that you've had about them and do for someone else what Jesus did for Zacchaeus. When we take time to make it personal, we're living like Jesus. Jesus was never satisfied by making a snap judgment about a person from far away. Even though he already knew that person, he always wanted to get close and personal. He got close, he took time, and he never let a label inform his opinion about a person. He cared about what mattered to a person because they mattered to him. Now you have a chance to go and do the same for him. So, as this video comes to a close, think about those 2 things. What would you tell Jesus about? And who do you need to ask what they're interested in?